Thank you very much. And now we're going to turn to Anthony Gallippi, co-founder and CEO of BitPay.
Great. Thank you, Chairman Merkley and Warner, ranking members Heller and Kirk, and distinguished members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Tony Gallippi, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of BitPay. I appreciate the members for their interest in the commercial and international trade aspects of digital currencies, and more importantly, the opportunities for digital currencies to create jobs in America and to increase America's exports. Our company BitPay was started in May 2011. We've been operating for over 2 years now, which makes us pretty old in the Bitcoin space. During this time, we've acquired over 12,000 merchants to accept Bitcoin using our service. Our merchants include many small and medium-sized businesses in every state who accept Bitcoin side by side with credit cards and other forms of payment. Most online payments today are made with credit cards, but credit cards were never designed for the internet. Credit cards were designed in the 1950s, and last year over 12 million people became victims of identity theft, mostly from shopping online. Businesses lose over $20 billion a year due to payment fraud. The banks don't take responsibility for the fraud. If you're a business, it is your fault that you took a stolen credit card, even if the bank approved it. And credit card fees are discriminatory. The highest fees are paid by the smallest mom-and-pop businesses and the lowest-income consumers. Bitcoin is a cheaper, faster, and more secure payment system with no discrimination against smaller businesses. At BitPay, our role in the Bitcoin ecosystem is very close to that of the traditional merchant acquirers in the credit card space. Our software helps merchants clear and settle transactions over the Bitcoin network. BitPay has a strict Know Your Customer policy to verify all of our merchant applications. We need to know who our merchants are and what they're selling. We only want the good actors using our service. BitPay also follows all Bank Secrecy Act guidelines to prevent, detect, and report suspicious activity. Our strict policies to comply with laws and protect our brand have earned BitPay the reputation as a leader and well-respected company in the payment space. Bitcoin does have some limitations that will keep it a small player in the payment space for quite some time. Compared to credit cards, for example, Visa's payment network can handle 20,000 transactions per second worldwide. Bitcoin can handle 7, not 7,000, 7 transactions per second. So even though it's very small, Bitcoin has invented something pretty amazing. With Bitcoin, it is now possible to transfer an asset remotely and immediately settle the transaction with no counterparty risk. That type of instrument has never existed before. And the possibilities of this instant worldwide settlement are very interesting. The Bitcoin blockchain, which is the public accounting ledger of Bitcoin, is a large property rights database. It can handle quadrillions of individual asset accounts with a full chain of custody every time an asset is transferred from one party to another. If you want to energize the housing market, think of Bitcoin. The biggest upfront costs for consumers trying to buy a home today are the closing costs, high fees for deeds, titles, stamps, insurance, and other redundant tasks to record the sale in different record books. Bitcoin can replace thousands of dollars in closing costs with a single transaction that costs 5 cents. Bitcoin does have risks. Criminals use cell phones, criminals use email, criminals use dollars, and criminals use banks. Many businesses like BitPay, offering innovative services on top of Bitcoin, share the committee's goals to protect consumers from fraud and keep the criminals away from our businesses. Guidance from the IRS, Treasury, Justice, and SEC have all established that Bitcoins are legal, and those dealing with them must follow the existing tax laws and anti-money laundering regulations. In the early 90s, when the internet was in its infancy, Congress took a wait-and-see attitude to let the internet develop. So where would social media and other free applications of the internet be today if in the 90s we required licenses for the internet and we taxed internet access as if it was a telecom? In 95, the National Science Foundation lifted its strict prohibition of e-commerce, and immediately companies like Amazon, eBay, and Dell were born. Americans will benefit from a similar openness and wait-and-see approach to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a technology with tremendous cost savings for businesses and consumers. Bitcoin is a more secure, faster, and more affordable option for transferring funds. If America is the leader in Bitcoin technology, America will create more jobs and more exports. In conclusion, today Bitcoin is in its infancy. It's much like the internet of the early 90s. If we look 10 to 20 years in the future, we will see many companies built upon Bitcoin-related technology, and we want those companies to be based in America, creating jobs in America, and building a revenue base and a tax base in America. I commend the committee for realizing and recognizing the real practical uses for virtual currency, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you very much. And we're going to jump right into questions. And given we have 16 minutes and 4 of us, I'm going to ask 4 minutes to be on the clock. And I'm going to take my 4 minutes now, and I have 3 questions, so I'm going to try to move them quickly and see if I can get through all of them. First, Mr. Gallippi, what is your transaction fee?
So our transaction fee when we first started was 1%. So compared to credit cards are around 3%, we're 1%. But we realized very quickly that our marginal cost to do a transaction is low. So we've actually switched over to a software as a service pricing model. Different features and different levels of service. Merchants pay 1 monthly fee, then they can transact all they want with no transaction fees.
So I've got Wi-Fi's out in Oregon that says it likes to accept Bitcoins because it has 1/10 of 1% transaction fee. Do any of your transaction fees go that low?
Possibly. Well, if you take our monthly service and divide it by the volume that you put through, you could get something that low. That's correct.
Okay, that's fascinating. Thank you.
Well, actually, our business model, and I've detailed it more in my written testimony, we are just a merchant acquirer. So we only facilitate the payments for merchants. We don't have a consumer wallet. We don't offer an exchange for consumers. So we're strictly focusing on business acceptance and business adoption of Bitcoin. And the rules and regulations around that are fairly well defined, in the credit card space, and our business model is very similar to them.
I'm just wondering what would happen if someone like Senator Warner cornered the market of virtual coins. How would that impact the consumer marketplace?
Well, it's interesting. We look at Bitcoin being traded in open markets today, and China is getting very aggressive in the open market. And if we want America to remain a leader in technology and in Bitcoin, you have to look at the exchanges because that's where all the liquidity is. And right now, the number 1 exchange in the world for Bitcoin is in China. The number 2 exchange is in Japan. Numbers 3, 4, and 5 are in Europe. Number 6 is in Canada. America is not a leader right now in the liquidity and the exchange of Bitcoins.
You talked a little bit earlier in your testimony about vetting these businesses. What is that? What is that? What do you have to do?
Well, I mean, it's modeled really around the credit card system. What does it take to get a merchant account with a credit card processor? We've modeled our system after that. So we need to know that, A, you're a legitimate business. We need to know who you are, and we need to know what you're selling. And then depending on the different levels of volume that you want to process with, we'll go even deeper into getting background checks and that kind of thing. Yeah, I think the example of Kenya is a great one. Kenya is a country where more people have access to smartphones than to running water. And the telecom companies stepped up and saw that there was a need, that the existing banking infrastructure was not meeting the needs of the people, and so the telecoms built a mobile payment system in Kenya that today represents 30% of the GDP of Kenya. It's done by people sending text messages on their cell phone.
And I guess, Mr. Gallippi, I want to just make an editorial comment. I agree with you. We got to get this balance right. We want to keep this innovation in America. But as a former governor, the revenue leakage from internet-based transactions for states that depend upon a sales tax is an enormous challenge. So we've got to get this balance right, and it is that is one of our challenges going forward.